am hoping that even if you don't necessarily connect directly with me, you connect with one or some of the people that I have interviewed and would feel comfortable working with me on a coaching basis or suggesting me to your friends or whatever. If you feel like you need some help accessing parts of yourself that feel stuck or frustrated, I'm here to help you. I am pulling together a curriculum of a 4-month journey of the self, and I will be posting more information about it. If you're interested, I can tell you more about it. We go through 8 different modules: expression, spirit, embodiment, emotion, peace of mind, selflessness, environment, and community. So if there's any of those parts, which I haven't even explained yet, but if there's any of those that even trigger something like, oh my gosh, I need some help with that, let me know. Right now, I'm just doing free discovery calls just to kind of make sure that we're both good fits for each other. And I will link that link below as well. And in the meantime, I hope you really, really enjoy this interview. Welcome, everybody. This is Alyssa from Awaken Authenticity, and today I have for you a woman that I've known for a while. I first met her through my mom, and her name is Kendra Adkisson. She's a mother of 3. She's a midwife, and she's just an all-around super living life out loud and just making what you can of whatever's thrown your way kind of person. And I wanted to share her with you. So welcome, Kendra.
Thank you very much. I'm honored that I fall in that category.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Anything that I didn't touch on?
No, that's a pretty good
Okay.
bio there. The key things.
Awesome. You're one of a few mothers that I have interviewed, but this is the first conversation that I'm having with a parent where I want to focus a lot of my attention on the parenting aspect of life. And so I know that when you're a parent, so much of your energy goes towards your children and your family. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how it feels. First, tell us a little bit about your children, and then tell us how it feels to have made the transition from being a single person and then all the way to, going through the beginning stages of motherhood, and then being in a place now where you've had several years to kind of like, I don't know, it looks like your life is never settled, but you at least kind of have a rhythm.
I don't. So I have 3 children who are soon to be 11, 12, and 13. My first child is actually the middle, my biological daughter. And then we have 2 sons adopted from Haiti. And the boys came home when they were 3 and 5, and Violet was 4. So the transition from single to being married was no problem at all. Like, I was like, what are people talking about? Marriage is work. Like, they just didn't pick the right person, because clearly we're best friends and this is wonderful. And then the kid came, that was my biggest change. For some people it may be marriage, but having a baby, while wonderful and life-changing, is incredibly stressful. And so being an independent, ambitious person with a healthy dose of ADD, having a baby was rough. And I think I can say that now looking back, because when you're in the weeds, like, it's rough and you're just trying to survive. But yeah, like, there were times where I'm like, maybe I'm not the mothering type, and then I thought, well, maybe I'm selfish because there's so much stuff I want to do. And so I was just constantly frustrated that I couldn't do those things, because now I have to take care of this life that I made because I wanted it. Mm-hmm. She also didn't sleep very well at all. And of course, most people are all pro breastfeeding, and I'm a midwife and I'm pro breastfeeding, and I breastfed her for 3 years, and it was exhausting. Yeah. It is huge. Like, you can't really conceptualize waking up every 2 hours, 1.5 to 2 hours for a year. So the lack of sleep was very difficult. And after I had my daughter, we were going to adopt anyway. Before we had my daughter, she was an accident. But after her and other life circumstances, it was, I wanted children who weren't infants, age 3 and 5. And they have their own set of issues, like peeing in the bed till they're in middle school, whatever. But that having 2 adopted boys was easier than an infant, my difficult infant. And so I didn't accept reality. I'm not very good at accepting reality.
What do you mean when you say that?
I still think I can do anything I think of. It's toned down a little bit. Like I still think I can do it. Like I'll get around to it. Like it's just starting to settle into my bones. I'll be 40 in March. And it's just starting to settle in. Like I am not going to live long enough to do all the ideas. I can't do it. Which is also frustrating and sad. And also makes you a feminist because you think, well, the men can. So while my husband is supportive and helpful, he can't breastfeed.
Right.
He can change the diapers. And he, they're just at the end of the day, there are certain things that are mom. So I may be going on about the mom part really a lot, but I did nursing school with a baby and I did my master's degree with 3 little kids, which I think of as the dark years. And, not only was I doing a master's, but I was doing it in midwifery. So there comes a point where you're doing all your clinical hours. And so I had to be on call for the midwife that I was precepting with. So we had a UK student live here.
Oh, wow.
Because John, my husband, works odd hours as well. And so if I have to leave at 2 a.m., like I can't figure out how my kids are getting to school. So it was a constant strategy of the what if plans whenever you're on call. Like if you wake up and I'm not here, follow these instructions. And the lowest point, there were several low points, but one low point, and this was after I was a midwife, I didn't know how my kids were going to get picked up from the bus. And I put it on Facebook, who can pick up my kids? And somebody told me about this girl who's a UK student that could do it. And I knew that person. And he texted me her number. And I literally texted her a picture of my children. And she picked my kids up off the bus. And then I met her when I got home and paid her. So I think there are times, and you can kind of laugh about it and be like, oh, the life of a midwife, but the guilt is really I have a lot of guilt. I have a lot of mom guilt. And so I think it will be interesting to talk to women who are successful and mothers. And now I'm doing my doctorate and have kids. And
what are you doing your doctorate in?
I'm doing my doctorate in nursing practice at Yale. And so I have to go once a month to Connecticut. I live in Kentucky. Yeah. There are times when being a mother and having ambition, it really feels in conflict.
Yeah.
And then being a woman who's ambitious and married to a husband who is musically ambitious, which involves a lot of nights and weekends, there were and are tough times where he and I have to negotiate and communicate and go to couples therapy and figure out like whose thing is the priority right now and who needs help, what, and are we communicating about it, and all of that stuff. So, I can post my funny things on Facebook, which I do, and life is crazy and it should be a reality show. But it's not all easy.
Yeah. No.
And there are things that I would change. I think people who say, I have no regrets, da, da, da. Well, really? Do you really have no regret? Like, can you not really anything that you've done might possibly regret or change? So I think to say I have no regrets or carpe diem is a little bit of bullshit. You can't seize the day. Maybe if you're a white male, you can seize the day. But at the end of the day, moms can't seize the day. You have to feed your children. I can't go karaoke tonight or,
Right.
Because prior to being a mom, like if my living room was red and then I'm sitting there and had the idea it should be lime green, then I go to Lowe's, get the paint, and before my husband even gets home, the living room's lime green. Like, that's just what I do. And so you can't do that anymore. Well, I would try and then get halfway through a room or be mad that like they're arguing or hungry when I don't need to eat at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because I want my living room to be lime green.
Right.
So it's difficult. It is a different season for women to figure out what the priorities are. And I think sometimes, in kind of a cosmic sense, if your priorities are out of whack, something is going to smack you in the head to where you can't not pay attention.
Yeah.
Do you like, oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have an example of that happening? I mean, I can think of several in my own life.
I do. I have 4 specific examples in my life. 3. And I can talk about none of them, really.
Okay.
Due to confidentiality and legality and personal things. But to say, you know, when you have all of the things, and this is what a therapist said once, which was great. She said, you know, in the same way that I wouldn't wish anyone to have cancer, a lot of people move through that as a life-changing experience that gave them perspective to then live a different life. Right. And so I think when you have something that is tragic or devastating or seems like you have no idea and you can't understand why this is possibly happening, and it is painful, but that you move through it and you're like, oh, and you even kind of get to the point where you wouldn't change anything because it made you who you were and changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
But all of those things, all of the 3 things, really, what's great, you know, that phrase, don't sweat the small stuff. Like, I don't think you cannot sweat the small stuff until some big shit happens. You really can't sweat, like, you don't have freaking time, like, you can't, right. It's not even like you have to meditate on it. It becomes so obvious. Something that's important and something that can wait, and that you really look back and you're like, how did I even, can't believe I was even concerned about that before. Yeah.
You're prioritized. I was going to ask you about prioritizing, because sometimes when we have all of these different things calling our names and kind of pulling us in different directions, it can be really hard to figure out. It's easy to be paralyzed and figure out and be like, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do any of them. And then when you have these huge situations, it becomes real clear, real quick, what your priorities are and what you have to do.
Yeah. And so I think motherhood is part of that for women. You can't not get out of bed. Like, you can't not feed them.
Yeah.
You know, so you can't be paralyzed. I mean, you can, and we give people medication and help them and what have you. So I think that's one way. I mean, I was a feminist before, but mothering really made me like more of a pissed off feminist, because, you know, guys can do a lot of things that's not on their, it's not in their DNA. And I think they can be, and they can be great, but I just think children make that priority clear. When you have a baby that's crying, like, there's no option of, am I eating bonbons on the couch or am I feeding my child? Right. You don't get a choice.
Right.
But I think that sometimes when we think of that midlife crisis of men, this is my own little theories that I might write about someday, but we think of men, you know, buying the sports car and getting the trophy wife and all this other stuff. I think for women, and what I've heard it described as is like, it's an escape and a way for them to find themselves. And I think women go through their crisis when they become mothers, because there is no option not to give up yourself. So you've already lost your identity in some way. It's just redefined. You have to redefine your identity once you become a mother.
Yeah.
And men don't really have to do that. I mean, they're a dad, they're the family guy. And so I think that's where we get to the stereotypical, I talk to lots and lots of women every day in my office, of the 40-year-old man who's suddenly like, oh shit, I have a family and 2 kids and I'm stuck in this job. Like, they've never had to really face, I can't just do what I want all the time. And so then that's when they're like, I'll go buy a sports car or whatever. So that's my own little theory about that. So I think for women, it's great to have that happen because children do focus you on what matters. And it just takes me a while. And obviously I'm getting my doctorate now. Like, I still haven't gotten the message that you can't do everything and have kids. You just cannot, unless you have money to like pay for stuff to get taken care of. Because I think of Hillary Clinton or Margaret Thatcher, or whoever. I'm like, how did they do it with a kid?
Yeah, I just finished watching Downton Abbey, and oh man, it looks so easy when you have people cooking your food for you and taking care of your horses for you and feeding and nursing your children for you and all of that.
Yeah.
So okay, so there's a lot that you've talked about, that touched on, that I want to come back to. So the idea, okay, you were talking about feeling selfish sometimes when you do want to do things that are not motherhood related necessarily. And also just the idea that when you have kids, all of a sudden your identity is redefined. And that said, you still do plenty of things that are really fun. You make fun videos on YouTube, and you're just like, you have a really great sense of humor and a great way of, I feel like, connecting to who you are at your core, with or without children. And you often involve your children in that, which is beautiful, but I feel like you do a good job of like staying true to who Kendra is and not just being Kendra the mom. And I think that's something that most people have a really hard time doing. I feel like so many people, when they have children, lose their identity wholehearted, completely. And you have managed to hold on to that. And I was wondering if you could tell us some of the things that either allow you to feel like, okay, I have some time and I can work on this stuff, or just like the types of inspirations that are so overwhelming that you're like, I have to do this.
It's just compulsivity. It's just having an idea. And I've described it before as like, it feel, like Pop Rocks in Mountain Dew or something. Like, it feel like there's a specific there's a specific physical feeling when I have an idea that I need to do. And so I compulsively do it, or I jot it down to remember to do later. I was telling my husband about another video I need to do. He's like, when the hell are you going to do that? So I don't have time. Everybody has 24 hours in a day. I'm a person that needs sleep. Unfortunately, I wish I could be one of those 5-hour people. I am not. And I became a midwife. I know. And so if I'm doing something fun or for myself, I'm probably ignoring the children or ignoring my husband or not cleaning, or like I'm not so great at prioritizing.
Okay.
Not really. And so I will work on something that's fun to procrastinate doing something I need to do, like the taxes or what have you. So it's not necessarily a good trait to have, but I've had fun. And then, just 2 examples of the kids, like Violet one time when she was little was complaining about her ear. And of course, nurses are the worst. We're like, you're fine unless you're dying. Anyway, when I finally took her to the doctor, they were like, oh, this is the worst I've seen. Her eardrum's busted and da-da-da-da. Not a good moment, not a good mom moment, because I can't take off work, or I really do have a job where you can't leave work. I mean, if somebody died, obviously I would be out the door, but you can't just leave every time your kid calls sick from school.
Yeah.
I can't. Who's going to see my patient? Like, you just can't do it. And then another thing is that both of my sons have dyslexia. And so I knew something was up a few years before we got a diagnosis. And it was happening the first year that I was a midwife, and I was just all consumed. Your first year practicing is really stressful because you're trying to learn everything and the hours. I was commuting to another city, 45 minutes away. And when I was on call, I would just stay there. So when I was on call a weekend, I would be there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and miss the whole weekend. And so I wasn't tuned in. I wasn't doing his homework with him after school and all of this. I was just saying, who my mom or a babysitter, whoever was looking over it. And I'm like, good, I don't have to worry about it. And so the next year I went part-time, and I spent many, many hours on his services, what he was getting, having him tested, getting an attorney. I did a lot about his dyslexia stuff, and I really feel guilty about not doing that before, because it cost him a year of school because I was checked out doing my thing. And so what I've learned from that, which is kind of one of the 3 things with changing a job, like being reluctant to change a job, or having something come your way that you kind of do begrudgingly, but it turns out being just what you needed. Like I have a job now that I wouldn't have necessarily sought out, how life happens. Yeah. And because I'm not catching babies right now. And that was very, very sad for me. I felt like I was losing my identity as a midwife. And so part of me was like, yeah, I'm doing it for my doctorate. But then I realized, like, I can't believe I'm going to say this on camera, but I really like not catching babies. Like, that it's stressful, but then when you realize, like, I was attached to my phone for call. If I went to a soccer game, I would have to have I would pay a babysitter to come to the soccer games in case I left and I have to go and I need her to drive them. So all of those logistics, I do not miss at all. So the point of me saying this is that the ego and ambition can lead you, like, if you just follow your gut, like if I followed my gut and got what I wanted, I might be miserable. Like, I don't know this follow your gut stuff either. Like, is everybody's gut right? Like, everybody gets to be an artist? Like, no, we actually need some nurses. We actually need the garbage man. I need a plumber. Like, I think it's a very privileged and entitled for people to be like, oh, just live life and do what you love and love what you do. Like, if we did that, there would be no fucking doctors. Some doctors that I'm sure love it. There are a lot of miserable doctors, and there are a lot of nurses who are tired and stressed, and if they won $1 million tomorrow, they would quit. But yeah. I'm really glad there's some nurses. It is really hard work, and we need somebody to do that. Would they rather have a cooking show? Probably.
Right.
I think we have enough cooking shows. We have a nursing shortage. There are children dying of malaria. We need help. Like, somebody's got to be the IT guy. Somebody's got to, I don't know, all the niches need to be filled, and I'm on another tangent. But all of this to say, it is okay to just be a nurse. You don't have to be a nurse practitioner. You don't have to be a chief nursing officer. You don't have to be the VP of the clinic. You don't have to get your doctorate.
Right.
Maybe if you just worked your 3 shifts and made some videos, that would be fulfilling. That sounds familiar. So I think sometimes we can be our own worst enemy when we are shooting for the pie in the sky.
Absolutely. And I also feel like it's a good point to recognize that there's a lot of trial and error in finding what is fulfilling to you. I think that, I've had people say to me, well, listen, it just looks so easy for you. You just seem to always know what you want to do and you do it. And I'm like, well, I mean, partially that's true, but a lot of it is trial and error. Like, I was a dancer my whole life just because I grew up with a mom who was a dancer and always enrolled me in dance classes. And it was fine. It was good. I liked tap dance a lot, but I was in a lot of dance classes where I would just do them for a few months and go to another kind. belly dance was one of those kinds of dance that I took and thought I would just do it for a semester. And then I accidentally stumbled upon something that I really, really enjoyed, and I never quit. And that was, almost 20 years ago. And I never, like, if you would have said, Alyssa, you're going to be a professional belly dancer when I was a kid, I would have been like, that's the most ridiculous thing. That's way too girly for me. That is so what I'm interested in. And I was wrong.
Right.
The process that you go through, that whole process of going from being Kendra to being married and having children and changing jobs and figuring out like where you are, what's your priorities and all of that stuff. Like, where does authenticity fit into that? Like, what is the role of authenticity in your life? Or is it a role?
I don't think I'm authentic.
You don't? That's surprising. What do you think? Why not?
If I were authentic, no one would like me.
Really?
I think if you're like, how are you not an asshole if you're authentic? Like, does honesty and transparency, like, I fake it. I am so fake. I'm really, really fake.
Really?
A large percent of the time. Like, the majority of the time, I'm fake.
I love hearing this. You're the first person that I've talked to who has just said, I don't even feel authentic. I don't know.
No, I'm a fraud. So, so for the most serious, like, I'll go from the most serious to the most benign. Mm-hmm. If you are a healthcare provider, you are fake all day.
Mm-hmm. You kind of, you have to, when you're in a professional setting, you have to be kind to everybody, no matter who walks in the door. Yes.
You're listening. You are concerned. You are putting whatever is in your brain on hold, trying to. The worst case, I had a baby die, and I carried the baby to the operating room to have its heart valves harvested. So I'm in the operating room, they sew it up, I wrap it up, I have to carry this baby in a baby coffin back to the mother, do that thing, go to the office, do a few pap smears. How are you doing? Sorry you had to wait.
Right.
People are pissed because it took too long. And I can't say, I just saw a baby's heart get harvested. I'm sorry that we are an hour behind on your pap smear. Mm-hmm. If I said what I wanted to say, I wouldn't have any patients left. And then I had a delivery.
You have to keep your patience to keep your patience.
That's right. Then I had a delivery with a lovely patient client that I love. She is hilarious. Her husband is hilarious. We had a great rapport the whole pregnancy. So hours after I'm handing a dead baby to her mom, I'm doing this delivery with this hilarious couple. And they took this great picture of me doing the delivery. And while it is a fantastic picture, and it was on my Facebook profile for a long time, and they're like, this was the best, and it was so fun. Like, it is all fake because I just had a traumatic experience 2 hours ago. And you can't tell the couple, sorry, this birth is going to be somber because you're lucky your baby is alive. You just, professionalism calls for that, obviously. Mm-hmm. And no sleep. You've had no sleep. You're cranky. You cannot be cranky. Mm-hmm. And you can't tell every person that you walk in there, sorry, I didn't get any sleep last night. Right. You don't know that. You just carry on. And, your kid's eardrum just blew out and it's your fault. And you just act like it's all good. And then with kids at home, I think the family bears the brunt of that because it's exhausting being fake. Mm-hmm. It's easier to be authentic. Mm-hmm. Although that's, it could go either way. But then with the kids too, you can't just say, I don't really want to go to your soccer game this afternoon. I'd rather watch some paint dry. No, you're like, yay, you're going to do awesome. It's going to be great. We're driving out there. You know, there's 2 hours between the games because they're not on the same team. We're just going to kick it around the field. It's going to be great. No, that's fake too.
So I think that that's a really interesting perspective because in my mind, what I see is that you are a dedicated person, and that dedication is being authentic. Your dedication to your career, your dedication to your family, those are authentic places where you put in that effort, that extra effort to be maybe happier or more pleasant than you actually feel, because those things matter to you. So I mean, like, in my mind, they're not mutually exclusive. But I really appreciate your honesty in sharing how you feel. I think that's important for people to recognize that, like, just because whatever it is that you're doing something that you care about, and that doesn't mean you're going to be happy all the time.
Right. That's true. And that authenticity and honesty and transparency aren't mutually exclusive either. You can be authentic without being honest.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps, maybe. Or be authentic without being transparent. I'm not going to tell a person, why are you're late. I was not out back smoking. I promise you
right.
that. But if you want to go ahead and vent at me right now, feel free, and I'm just going to smile. So that's being authentic, but I'm not giving the information of why we're running an hour and a half behind.
Right.
I can see that.
One of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about is, and I think this comes into play when you were just talking about, you mentioned putting your brain on hold. And I think that that's a really interesting idea, coming from someone who has gone through the mental acrobatics that a trained Buddhist goes through. So let's talk about your history with Buddhism and being a nun, and your failures and successes with that experience.
I do not consider myself Buddhist.
Okay.
So I'll just put that out there too. And Buddhism for me and international travel go hand in hand with perspective. Mm-hmm. And my bachelor's is in comparative religion. So I love religion. I love religious iconography, anything. I love it. With Buddhism, it's really that perspective of what is reality and what is my reaction to something. Mm-hmm. And it's just the very basic thing of, it's basically what I said before about the three things in my life. Like, something that can seem negative is then a positive. Really, everything's neutral. There is no negative or positive. Everything is neutral, and what you make of it or how you perceive it. And one singular event can be tragic for one person and a gift to another. Mm-hmm. So nothing intrinsically has any value of good or bad, mm-hmm. which is hard for all of us. It's hard as a mom to practice non-attachment. I would just say virtually impossible to practice non-attachment as a mother. Mm. And it's also very hard to practice non-attachment as a health provider, mm-hmm. when your responsibility is life and everybody expects a baby. There can be no dead babies, no injured babies. That's not an option in America, because that's the expectation. Where if we were to step back, and this will sound very crass, but just by the numbers, not every baby's going to live.
Right.
Things are going to happen, and that is nature. And we need that to happen in the life cycle. But don't tell that to me, and don't tell that to any of my moms.
Right.
Everything has to be perfect. So that's hard.
Yeah.
But international travel and seeing, especially, and I'm not talking to England, I'm talking third world countries or countries that are in more poverty than the United States, is really perspective. Yeah. Really helps you to put, I'm worried about the socks not being mated. Okay, well, a lot of kids don't have socks. Or, you can always back it up and be like, yeah. Oh my God, I'm being ridiculous. First world problems is much easier to say that when you've been to a third world country.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is that I think it lowers your threshold of other people's complaints and concerns, mm-hmm. because it's hard to value that when that is hard for me. Very hard for me. And not to be on a soap, but I don't want to be self-righteous. I suck as a human, I'm sure. ways. I am no better. I am so guilty of so much crap. I am a hypocrite. But international travel really helps to get a step back and be like, oh God, this is not, I'm not worried about this anymore. I have some perspective. I do not live in a tent and carry my water my whole day isn't about how I'm getting water.
Yeah. Basic, it is such a privilege to have our basic needs met. And yeah, I mean, I've had clients that are like, oh, my life is so terrible. I have a really shitty life. I'm not doing anything. What is going on? And I was like, I mean, do you have any gratitude? What should I be grateful for? I don't like my job. I don't like my house. I'm like, wait, you have a job? Wait, you have a house? Like, you are eating good food right now as we speak. Like, well, but those are just like basics. I'm like, yeah, but you have basics. Like, that's something to be grateful for.
Yeah. Well, I thought of this idea, and you can have it, Alyssa. I'm giving it to you now. I wanted to do flashcards because I'm so visual, but I guess it could be an app. But it's perspective flashcards, and it would just have pictures of like tents in Haiti, and then you flip it over, and it says, like, are you concerned about your housing? Shut the fuck up. The back of every card says, shut the fuck up.
I love that idea.
Like, you called me about your yeast infection on Christmas morning. Do you have an anal vaginal fistula and poop out of your vagina? No? Then shut the fuck up. See, this is so bad. I'm so crass.
This is great. This is why you're my friend. I love these things.
Like, we just need some perspective. And if you need to get on your phone and spend 10 minutes looking at pictures of Syria, then that is what you need to do. And we can do your pap smear in 10 minutes when you have gotten yourself together and realized that your child missing her nap is okay. It is going to be okay.
Right.
And I need them too. My best flashcard, or the best image I have, and this goes to Buddhism of there is no self, but you think of going to nature or the gorge or somewhere to feel small. Like, I really need the universe to feel small. Maybe that speaks to my ego, but if I like repeating that phrase of like, there are 25 million, somebody needs to fact check this, but like 25 million universes or something. So if I look at space, or I think of space, it really makes everything okay.
Yeah.
We'll just stardust here for a second.
Yeah. It's like, if you can do something about the problems that you have at hand, then do something about them. Then you don't have to worry. If you can't do something about the problems at hand, then you can't do anything about it. So don't worry. It's just like, why worry ever? But it's like, either you can do something about it, so shut the fuck up, or you can't.
Yeah, it's the Serenity Prayer, knowing the things you can change. But I would also ask that nobody get to the point, because I think, of the whole image of like the dude or somebody, or a nihilist who just doesn't care, like nothing matters. Like, no, actually, women can't be nihilists because we have to feed our children. We would all be in jail if we were just like, I don't have to do that today. There are philosophical ideas, and then there's real life.
Yeah.
And while you don't want to feel guilty all the time, I do think that guilt and anger fuel change.
Absolutely.
Like, if I'm at the Bed Bath & Beyond and buying a $20 candle and feel guilty about that, well, maybe that's something I should listen to, and it's just hard to be human. There's so much. I don't want people to get lackadaisical and be like, well, you can't change anything.
Yeah.
Sixth mass extinction, we're all doomed. So well, in the meantime,
let's do the best.
There's like 1 million orphans living in tents in Haiti.
Yeah. So let's talk about that too. Raising children of a different background. That's something that you know very well. And tell me about some of the maybe unexpected things that have come up for you in that endeavor and experience.
Well, first of all, I'm so glad that we have the boys together, a sibling group, the brothers. My husband and I always wanted just 2 children, and we always wanted to adopt. So when we accidentally had a biological child, we didn't want to just adopt a second child of color who would be the odd man out in the family. So that's when we were like, okay, we need to have a sibling group. So their bond is insane. Like, they are tight, thick as thieves. And they are my teachers, like kids are, but they especially are my teachers. And talk about perspective. I mean, my kids, but Erickson specifically, was in an orphanage. Like, he was 5.5. He remembers, and he was abused and neglected and hungry and sexually abused. And he remembers sneaking food for other people, and you would hide some of your food back. And, you know, he has very vivid memories. And I think that's what, you know, when you have something traumatic, we may not remember before kindergarten very much, but when you have something traumatic, you remember.
Yeah.
So that too, and he is the sweetest kid on the face of the earth with this huge smile. Oh my God. And you would do anything. This is where you can't practice non-attachment. I mean, there's nothing, if I were a millionaire, it would be really difficult not to spoil him. Like, you would want to do whatever for this kid. Like, whatever you want, you are amazing. So he is great. He's happy. He is, and he struggles with dyslexia. And that is so hard as a parent to watch your kid and then I have my other daughter who, in 7th grade, you know, she's prepping for the SAT for that Duke TIP program or whatever. And then my other child has difficulty reading. They're the same grade level. Mm-hmm. So the struggles that people have, that gives you perspective. It gives you perspective. I wish everybody had to adopt. Like, for every kid you have biologically, you're required to adopt one. Because I think the world would be better. Obviously, kids would have homes, but not selfishly. I'm thinking of anybody who can love a pet. This sounds so pitiful, but like, you can love your pet. Can you not love a human who looks different than you do, comes from a different country? And I think we're seeing that as the generations grow. Like, when you see, I love seeing my white parents with my Black children, or my white 88-year-old grandmother and grandfather who had a Black man work on their farm. Mm-hmm. He was not a slave. They couldn't afford slaves, but I'm sure paid nothing, you know, I'm sure it was awful. And his nickname was Monk, which my grandmother told me was short for monkey. Oh my God. So they have such fond memories of Monk. And I was like, did Monk have a family or any? I don't know if he did. He was at our house. He went home for Christmas sometime, you know, no idea. And to see my boys crawl up in their laps, and, you know, it will, the more people are loving people with different backgrounds, the better it's going to be, because people's hearts are just going to melt. People's hearts are going to so that makes sense. I think it's been really good for our daughter, Violet, of course. She's 12 now, but she's been to back. We have an open adoption with their parents in Haiti, and we've been back. We're going again in 2 weeks. So she has seen Haiti and knows Haiti. Mm-hmm. And so we really have zero tolerance for, I hope anybody can report to me if my kids act spoiled, but we don't do the whole, I don't like that food, or I don't like that texture, not to go against people with a sensory disorder, but like, eat it. You're going to eat it. And I have been bad enough to pull up YouTube videos of starving children and show it to my kids. Yeah. Like, if you have anything else to say to me, go ahead right now. What did you want to say? That's what I thought. Eat your food. Like, we're not making multiple meat. Like, they eat what we have. There's no brand of whatever. Like, no, that is insanity.
Yeah. Sorry. You get what you get.
You get what you get. Get a job, go mow a lawn, and buy whatever brand of whatever you want. They don't have cell phones. They don't have iPads. They don't have any of that crap.
Yeah. Awesome.
So, yeah.
My grandparents, my dad's parents, they had 5 boys naturally, and then adopted 3 kids from Vietnam. And the 3 kids were on the last plane out of Vietnam. And I mean, they're, you know, They are my aunts and uncles exactly as much as my biological aunts and uncles are. And I would never, I mean, it is such a rich addition to the family, you know, I don't know. I just really appreciate their presence in my life so much. And so I can relate with you on that a little bit.
It's kind of nice to somewhat feel included in the Black community. Like when we're out publicly, we get a lot of knowing glances that are kind of like, I mean, I don't know what they're saying, but it seems like right on, all right, or good for you. And some people actually come up to us and say that.
Oh, cool.
So that's good too.
Before we go, I wanted to thank you so much for taking time out of your crazy life. I really, really appreciate this conversation and just watching you and all of your fun and all of your craziness on Facebook. And it's really nice to kind of like tap into that and hear what's going on behind the scenes a little bit. It's a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Alyssa.
Yeah, you're welcome. And let's see. So before we go, final thing, if you were sitting across the table from someone who is feeling stuck and frustrated in their life, what advice would you give them?
Get physically out of where you are. Go sit, use your imagination. Go sit in a bus stop. Go sit in a medical office waiting room. Imagine what those people are thinking. Imagine what somebody's waiting for the bus is thinking. Go sit in the cold. I don't know. Do something, but not be stuck.
Awesome.
But that's really hard for somebody who's stuck to do. Phone a friend. And misery loves company. But yeah, just physically writing down what you're grateful for.
Yeah.
You should be filling up pages and pages and pages.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And please say hello to John and the kids.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. Bye.
Bye.